Hi there guys, and welcome back to SitRep Gaming. In today's video we're going to be discussing Flinch in Call of Duty, and most importantly the issues which have arisen with the various ways that different developers have approached the problem of Flinch. The gameplay that you're seeing is from Black Ops 3, it's a TDM on the map Stronghold, and in honesty it's one of the most frustrating games I think I've ever played. I'm on the wrong side of a 3v6, which in the end somehow ends up to be a 3v7, and yet somehow I get over 50 kills, I get over a 4 KD, and go on to lose the match by a single point. So incredibly frustrating, but a really interesting gameplay nonetheless, and I hope you enjoy it. But let's get straight into the topic of conversation for today's video. So, Flinch. As many of you know, Flinch is a core mechanic in Call of Duty, and has been present for as long as I can remember playing the game. Flinch simply describes what happens to your character model when you receive gunfire in the multiplayer. So to illustrate, imagine I'm aiming down sights at a target, and off screen I receive a gunshot. All of a sudden my aim will swerve all over the shop, it won't be centered on what I was previously aiming at, and I'll be at essentially a significant disadvantage if I'm either currently in a gunfight or about to engage in a gunfight. So given that, the way which Flinch is incorporated in the way we combat Flinch has a significant impact on the way that we play the game and our ability to be successful at playing the game. Now the general approach to Flinch over the years has been that there's inherently a very high level of Flinch built into Call of Duty. That is to say, it's much higher than Flinch in a lot of other games. However, traditionally there's been a way to negate this, and that's through the presence of a perk which you can use in your creator class setup, which will allow you to significantly diminish the amount of flinch which you are given when you receive gunfire. Now this system endured for many years, but what ended up happening was it became so essential that you minimise your flinch that whatever perk tier the Toughness perk was in, you simply selected Toughness if you were serious about playing the game, and any other perk which was in that class, it just simply wasn't used. Now, when we got round to a few months before the release of Black Ops 3, David Vonderhaar, who, for those of you who don't know, is the studio head at Treyarch Studios, the development team in charge of the development of the Black Ops series, he came out and announced that Toughness was no more. There was not going to be a Toughness perk in Black Ops 3, nor was there going to be any perk which would diminish the level of flinch which you would receive in the game. So obviously there was quite a lot of interest and quite a lot of confusion over how this was going to be implemented. Were we going to be having previous levels of flinch in Call of Duty where it was extremely high? Were we going to be having much lower levels of inherent flinch? Now when the game came out, we all started playing it, and it became apparent pretty quickly that the implementation of flinch wasn't quite right, and there were two main reasons for this. Now, one of these reasons is what I call the primary exasperating reason for why Flinch was completely wrong in Black Ops 3. And that was the presence of a severely multiplying headshot multiplier attachment in the form of high caliber. Now, this was the attachment that you could pop onto an AR, and it would increase your headshot multiplier from what I believe was 1.1x as the base to I think around about 1.5 or 1.6x. I'm not entirely sure of those numbers, so don't quote me, but it was in that kind of ballpark. Now that in itself presented a challenge, because the inherent level of flinch that was introduced in Call of Duty Black Ops 3 I would describe as being somewhere between what the base level of flinch was in prior games and what the level of flinch was if you were using the Toughness perk. So it was somewhere sat in the middle. Now on paper this seemed like a relatively good idea, but it became very apparent that the base level of flinch in Black Ops 3 was always just enough to kick your gun up to the head height of your enemy when you were engaging in a gunfight. Now the problem arises where if your enemy is using the high caliber attachment on an AR, if you shoot them first, which natural Call of Duty logic dictates is what you should be doing, good players shoot first, they have the fastest reflexes and the game should reward them. But anyway, if you shoot first, then essentially what happens is your enemy's flinch kicks their gun up, so it's aiming at your head, and if they're running the high caliber attachment on an AR, then suddenly they can just melt you, particularly if they're using a gun such as the Man of War, or if they're using an M8. Pretty much any of the ARs with high caliber just melted people. Now this was incredibly frustrating, because what ended up happening was this feeling arose of simply being punished for shooting first. It was a regular occurrence that you would shoot someone first, and what would happen is the flinch that the other player, the enemy you've just shot, encountered, would simply kick their gun up to head height, and they'd get a cheap kill, and it was incredibly frustrating. It was so frustrating. So anyway, that was Black Ops 3, and in my eyes, the way Flinch was implemented was a bit of a failure. It simply didn't work, even though there were the best of intentions behind the implementation. Now if we move forward to Infinite Warfare, we see a similar system in place, but I personally think it's an improved system. And that's because we still don't have a perk to minimise flinch, sorry. We still have a headshot multiplier attachment in the form of hollow point, but we have a much lower level of base flinch built into the game than we do in Black Ops 3. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that the base level of flinch in Infinite Warfare is pretty much non-existent. Now, this is an improvement for the simple fact that you don't get the same amount of really frustrating, cheap feeling hit flinch headshot kills that you did in Black Ops 3. Yes, you can still be rewarded for the skill of picking a headshot out because we've got the hollow point attachment, but the flinch is such that you're not just going to randomly kick up and earn cheap kills if you're using that attachment, and the person who shot first is going to be punished. That's not the case in Infinite Warfare. So in my eyes, it's a significant improvement, and one of the things which Infinite Warfare actually does a lot better than Black Ops 3. Now of course the question is, as we move forward into Call of Duty World War II, what's the system going to be like? Now it's my understanding from the footage I've seen and from the commentary I've heard regarding the game that there is a high caliber type attachment that can be used, so we know there is going to be a way to multiply headshots. Now if this is the case, as everything is indicating, then it's imperative that Call of Duty World War II has an extremely low level of base flinch, because if it doesn't, if it has a level of flinch which is similar to Black Ops 3, then we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we're constantly experiencing cheap hit flinch headshot kills, and the person who shoots first is punished. Now I don't know about you guys, but this is one of the most frustrating things you can experience, particularly if you're someone who's running and gunning, you're rushing, you've got really good reflexes. You're just getting dumped on, and it's just not fair at all. So fingers crossed, the flinch in Call of Duty World War II is going to be really, really low. Now obviously it's difficult to tell from just looking at gameplay which has emerged thus far, but when we get hands on with the beta, then that'll be our first real, first real time to actually experience what the flinch is like in the game. So fingers crossed, it's really low. So that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed watching it, and if you have, please leave a like rating. It's really greatly appreciated. If you'd like to see more content from the channel, then don't forget to subscribe and also turn on the notifications so that you never miss another video. All that's left to say is thanks for tuning into SitRep Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.
Approaching POMR. Finish this.
Ruin KIA. Kill.
There are no words for what I just saw. That's a hard fail.
Outclassed, outgunned, and out of luck.